Fantasy Rap
with Austin and Ozzy.
Oh, I just love those boys.
Hey everyone, this is Fantasy Rap, and I'm your host Ozzy.
And I'm your co-host Austin.
You can find us on fantasyrap.com. That is fantasywrap.com. Hey everybody, welcome to week one follow-up of the fantasy season. The football season started.
Yep.
A lot of fun.
Yeah.
Interesting week.
Yeah.
Some good, some bad. We'll get to some of what happened, but let's talk about how we did. I'll let you start.
Not good. I went 0-3 in all my leagues. Yeah. Dynasty leagues. In ours, I have Amon-Ra and Chris Olave and Marvin Harrison, who combined for 8 points, maybe 7. So
well, they had 3 or 4 catches between them. So yeah,
and not too many targets.
Yeah, that was most of their points.
Yeah, so the rest of the team did well, but it was that my receiver core not so good. So other dynasty, I played against Nick, good friend of the podcast. His dynasty team, he's in win now mode. So him and I have actually been texting. I might be trying to move some of my older. I've got Devontae and Mike Evans in there, so I might be moving that. I've got a really good young core of receivers, so, might be blowing up that team a little bit to look towards the future. And
you just drafted that 2 years ago?
I didn't draft. I took it over.
Oh, you took it over.
So I took it over, and it was not a good team. And
Gotcha.
I actually got a compliment from Nick after he beat me by 20-something points, compliments on turning the team around a little bit.
Well, and I think you turned the one around in our league also.
Yeah, that one was actually that was a pretty decent, middle of the pack roster. I think Isaac's team, he's really done a good job because he inherited a dog. Yeah,
that was
dog turd of
that was a pile of poo.
Yep, and then Yahoo Fantasy, the Mark Andrews let down. That was more of a Chiefs defense taking him out of the game,
which is interesting because Isaiah Likely had a huge game.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about it. I'm sure at some point here, but
Well, yeah, we'll talk. We'll talk about him from that perspective.
Yeah.
But it was just interesting that.
Yeah,
that
Kansas City.
Well.
Historically, Andrews has not done good against Kansas City. They've just they took him out of the game. They bracketed him. If he ran farther than if his route was more than 3 yards down the field, he had 2 guys on him. So they just said, absolutely not. Lamar, find something else. Figure out a way to beat us without Mark Andrews. And he almost
found
did.
Ways.
So
he found ways to get it done.
Yep.
So I went 3-0. And as you and I sat here last night watching the game, I said,
"Look bad, man."
Well, and I said to you, I could go to bed and I could either be 3-0 or I could be 0-3.
Yep.
Every one of my games was such that. So our dynasty that we're in, I had CMC. I had a comfortable lead.
Yep.
I had CMC. He had Debo. I was in a position to just crush him. Mm-hmm. And then I find out CMC is out, and I think he would have had enough points because I dropped Lazard and picked up.
Lazard had a big game. Well,
he did, but I wasn't playing him.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. I couldn't play him because I didn't have CMC in my flex.
Yep.
Had I done that, I could have at least done something. But I ended up picking up Juszczyk, and Juszczyk had 2 catches and
40 yards.
Yeah, 40-some yards or so. So he got me enough.
And was 3 yards short of that touchdown on that one. So, yeah.
Could have been big.
Yep.
But, I pulled through on that.
Mm-hmm.
The other ones, they both had Kittle, and one of them had the San Fran defense.
Oof.
And the San Fran defense was doing really well, but it's what we do is we start with 8 points, and then we start taking away for yardage.
Oh, you guys do yardage? Okay.
Yeah. So once you hit 300-plus yards, you've got 0.
Oh, wow.
Now you can add back in with sacks and such. You can't ever go negative, but you can you could end up with 0 points.
Correct, yeah.
So early on when they had the fumble recovery and the interception and the sack, and it was looking more like they were going to stay up in that 15 range, 13, 15, whatever.
Yep.
And they started giving up the yardage in, it wasn't really junk time yet, because early in the second half is when they broke the 150, then they broke the 200, and I think they broke the 250. So it didn't kill me.
Yep.
Then in our league that I, walked away with it last year, I think I showed you I beat one of the teams by more than 500 points on the season. I was, I forget who I played, but my guys didn't do well.
Yeah.
And he had
Higgins, right?
Yeah, he had Higgins, and he left him in there and didn't play. Didn't change it out, and then he had Kittle yesterday.
Yeah.
So I had Breece Hall. Mm-hmm. He had Kittle, and he had one other player, and I don't remember who it was. And I had Breece Hall, and I was down. That's what it was. I was down by like 25 points, 27 points going into.
You have Moody in that one too?
I had Moody, and I had Breece, and I ended up beating him quite easily. Mm-hmm. By like 10. Yeah. Which, I easily could have lost that.
Yeah.
Easily.
Sure. Yep.
And so to be 3-0, I'm extremely happy. Mm-hmm. Who knows? It's like I say.
Week one.
Yeah. Any week you can either win or lose just based on. No one in our league had Boswell.
Yeah, probably nobody had Groupie.
One guy had Groupie.
Oh, really?
It's 16-teamer.
Yeah. Okay.
But you sit there and I played against Fairbairn, and he had 20, and I had got 29 out of
Aubrey.
Mm-hmm. So it all worked out.
Yep.
Next up, we've got our injuries, starting with Foster Moreau. He is in protocol for a concussion.
One of the top fantasy tight ends for week one, I think.
Yeah.
He was like in the top 4.
Yeah.
Because he scored a touchdown and had a little bit of yardage.
Right.
Tells you what happened to the tight end position for week one. So
and I wonder, we'll talk about our waiver wire, and I was trying to figure out, do I put him in there? There are 2 other tight ends there that should be getting more looks and touches.
Did Juwan Johnson, did he score this week too?
I don't remember.
That or he had, it was a drop, or he was just, I don't know, something, but yeah.
Yeah.
That one's in New Orleans. That was they were playing Carolina and beat the brakes off of them, and everybody got, Jamal Williams had a good game. Yeah. Because it was garbage time.
Right.
Know, so
Kamara didn't even have to play really past the first half because it was over.
Yep.
He did. He got some stuff, some more yards and catches, so he was fully involved, and I guess if you played Carolina every week, that looks great. Mm-hmm. Who knows what it's going to look like when they play a better defense and a team that actually can move the ball as opposed to going 3 and out almost every time.
Yep.
So next up, we've got Jalen Waddle, who had a head injury but returned.
Yeah, that one, I've got Waddle in the redraft, the Yahoo League, which is, kind of like my main, league, the one I really, really care about.
Right.
And that's the league I've never won in. I'm an OG. This is year 15 of that league for us. OG, I've gotten second like once. I've got third a couple times.
Let me just say OG.
But, yeah. All right. Dad joke of the day.
Bad joke. Bad dad joke.
Yeah, there you go.
So, he returned.
That one was just frustrating because,
but he came back and he had some yardage.
Well, it was, leading up to this game, he had been in a non-contact jersey for like a week straight, and they're, kind of ho-humming if he's going to play and, or if he's 100%, and then he's in. And it was, a great spot against Jacksonville. They kept it somewhat competitive, so Miami had to still do well on offense, but it was nice. I got the notification. I'm like, well, I lost this week, and then it was 5 minutes later, he had like a 61-yard catch and run or something
Right,
like that.
right.
So I was like, oh, he's back in.
Yeah. It was confusing because I was reading on Facebook on one of the fantasy groups, and they were like, I just lost my season. Waddle's out. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, that's kind of jumping the gun,
Yeah.
but we'll
Yep.
see. Next up, we've got David Njoku. He is week to week with a high ankle sprain.
Yeah, that was a really, really bad game for Cleveland's offense. Deshaun Watson looks horrible. I don't think he'll ever return. I think all the off-field stuff that he had it just messed with him so much mentally that I think
it had to have.
it's affected him physically how he plays the game.
Because physically, the dude, I mean, he's in shape.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no question about that.
Plus, he's got that basically fully guaranteed contract.
Right.
It's not like he,
Right, he doesn't have to prove anything,
Yeah,
but he has to
so-
prove something.
Exactly.
Because
So,
otherwise, he's
yeah.
going to be an expensive backup.
I mean, I'm getting paid, but yeah. So, I mean, Njoku, he was
Yeah.
he was one of the
Those are a lot of millions.
yeah, a lot. Njoku too. That's a guy that if you missed out on the Kelsey's, Andrews, Laporta's, McBride's, all these guys, Njoku, Kincaid, Njoku was a guy a lot of people were targeting later.
Yeah.
Because he had the amazing end of the season.
Right.
But that was with Joe Flacco, I believe.
True.
So, I mean, Cleveland's got Jameis as their backup, and there's people already calling to see Jameis. So I give it a couple more weeks. If Deshaun Watson looks as bad as he did this week, we will probably see Jameis Winston.
I do not know how you step away from that contract.
I listening to or reading something or listening to something, I think yesterday or either this morning on the way to work, somebody says you might just have to do what Denver did with Russell and just eat it, just take it, just
Yeah,
eat
but
it.
you can't afford to eat it over 1 year and the next.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's true, but I think he's gonna.
what about a
Cleveland,
trade?
I don't know if there's anybody that would really.
Well, you
want
remember
it.
when
I don't think any team is
wasn't
going to
it,
take on that.
Wasn't it Simeon who got traded, and they gave him like a second round pick or something?
Yeah, I don't remember what. It
I mean, you
Yeah.
would have to give picks and him to get rid of that contract. Otherwise, in my mind, you're going to keep him on the roster. You're going to waste a roster spot, and it's going to cost you the however many million, 40 million a year until it's pretty much done.
And that's what I mean. The Browns are going to brown. Haven't been the smartest organization and not the best well run. In years prior.
Oh, they probably have smart people there. It's
Yeah.
just not well run.
But you look at that. That's a talented roster.
It
Very
is.
talented roster, and it's a shame that they could potentially be looking like they're going to waste all of that talent by making that what at the time, even then, people said was a horrible, trade or the contract. that
Chubb will be back partway through the season.
Yeah,
Could change things.
I mean, obviously, and that remains to be seen what he's got left. Because
Sure.
that's the knee he destroyed at Georgia, and you get a second devastating injury.
I know.
I mean, I guess on the bright side, you could look at, J.K. Dobbins
Yeah.
and say, I mean, Dobbins did it, and I think Nick
Well.
Chubb is more of an athletic freak than Dobbins.
J.K. played one game.
True.
And I'm not saying he's going to get hurt.
Yeah.
And I don't want him to get hurt.
Yeah.
I'm just saying you're only one game into the season. Next up, we've got Jake Ferguson. He's week to week with a knee.
Mm-hmm.
That could hurt some teams. I mean, although Ferguson was probably, 10, 12, 14th?
Yeah, something
Draft
like
order.
that. Yeah.
I mean, he's a backup on one of my teams.
Yeah, he's
In a
I've
ten-
got,
it-
in my dynasty. I've got him on my bench backing up Andrews. But I mean, again, a guy that if you were to punt the tight end position in your draft, this was a guy on presumably a very good offense who was pretty heavily involved last year.
Right.
So for the draft price that you applied to Jake Ferguson, you were hoping so. I did hear they're talking maybe they said some bone bruise as well in the knee, so it might end up being more of a pain tolerance if he can go.
Right.
as well. So
Right.
yeah, but
Next up, we have Puka Nakua. Talk about high draft capital.
yeah,
Out at least 4 weeks. He was placed on IR with a knee injury.
I think
which-
I heard PCL.
Yeah.
I think I heard it.
Elevates Cooper Cup massively.
Like we were just talking, Cup had 21 targets in that game, which is insane. But before Puka, that's what you saw with Cooper Cup. He was consistently getting 15 targets.
And
or
when
more a
Puka,
game.
look at Puka at the beginning of last year, the
Cup
first
was
half
out.
of the year, Puka was getting 15 plus targets a week.
Yeah, I mean it's just and it's crazy for Cooper Cup because you know it's going to him, but they just can't. You know he's not fast, but he's twitchy fast.
Yeah.
So he's always open.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you said, the draft capital for Puka, you were probably spending a second round pick on Puka Nakua, hoping that both of them could thrive, together.
And I think they would have.
Yes, I think they will later, depending on how
Well, and they
long
did
he's
toward the
out.
end of last year.
Exactly. So
I mean, there weren't.
it just week one sucks, and because he was on the sideline. I think he was down, went to the sideline, came back in, and then it was like next play was down again, and then at halftime went in on the. He didn't even walk to the locker room. He got a ride on the cart. So
That's the way I wanna go.
He looked pretty pissed off. So.
Yeah. Next up, we've got Jordan Addison, day-to-day with an ankle injury. I only heard about it.
Yeah, dude. I don't know if I was having like a fever dream. Did I not see something in the offseason that he had gotten like a 6-game suspension? Jordan Addison?
I remember there was something going on, but I don't recall exactly what it was.
I feel like I remember that, but Addison I think it was same day that McCarthy tore up his knee. I think it was the same day Addison hurt. He got an ankle injury. This is the other ankle.
Oh,
So
gotcha.
Not the one he injured in preseason.
I was thinking, what do I care if Mike
I know.
McCarthy got hurt?
Geez.
Yeah, I brain fart. I'm
McCarthy
just
probably twisted an ankle running up to the buffet, but
yeah.
So the Addison one, that's just
I
more
don't
targets.
think
more
Mike
targets
McCarthy
for-
runs
yeah,
anywhere.
yeah. If he's trying to beat out Andy Reid for first in line, but it's just more targets.
That's got to be
for,
a good race.
Yeah, I'd pay to see that. Just more targets for Jefferson and
Who actually looked pretty good.
and Aaron Jones too.
Yep.
He was looked good rushing the ball, had a few had some targets, and I think they're going to lean heavily on those two to keep that offense rolling to whatever extent it can with Sam Darnold.
Right. Next up, we've got Kenneth Walker III. He is day-to-day with what appears to be some sort of ab injury.
I didn't even. I heard nothing about that.
Apparently, he was holding his side.
He always seems to be something nagging him. I think it was like last season too. It was like basically all year he had the questionable tag on him.
Yeah.
And still ended up being fine. And he looked really good in that game from what I saw. Had a pretty good stat line. So yeah, like I said, I had heard nothing about that until just now.
Yep.
Actually.
Here is a
Yeah.
potentially season-changing one. Jordan Love out probably 2 to 6 weeks-ish with a knee.
They haven't even ruled him out for this week.
No, I know. I'm
But
just
yes, I would rather them be careful.
right, and they said it's how he responds to stuff and everything, and I don't disagree. I just know that the first reports were 3 to 6 weeks. Then I read somewhere 2 to 4. So I'm just saying more than likely. I'm not saying it's a guarantee, but more than likely it's in the 2 to 6 range. But who knows?
Yeah, and that if he does miss, the 2 weeks, like I said, I dropped Romeo Dobbs to pick up. I can't remember who I picked up, just because if Jordan Love is out, I think the only Packer that you can, I wouldn't even say trust, but that you would maybe roll out would be Jaden Reed, just because they manufacture him touches. They want to get him the ball.
Right.
And then obviously Josh Jacobs, because he's,
But Josh Jacobs
lone
didn't,
running back.
he didn't look that good.
Yeah,
In
so-
fact, when he was replaced by
Emmanuel Wilson.
Wilson, Wilson looked far better.
Yeah.
So, next up, we've got Josh Allen, and this is really he had, when he went in for his touchdown, he got drilled by Budda Baker, and he injured his non-throwing arm.
Yeah.
He returned, so I don't think it's going to impact anything.
Yeah.
I think it may impact whether or not he decides to run as much or jump over a pile.
Yeah.
He might just want to land in the pile. I don't know.
Yeah, that'd be nice. I mean, yeah, if that deters him from running next week, maybe we see a really good game from Kincaid. I mean, like I alluded to earlier with Foster Moreau, all of the top tight ends all did not live up to their projections.
Right.
I don't think
I'd like to see James Cook get the points.
Well, yes, that too. So yeah, but I think that might force him to throw more and protect that, even though it's his non-throwing arm. But
just to keep him from running
Yes.
as much.
Yep.
To make sure it's okay. Last up, we've got Robin Dunes, and he had a knee injury, and it's unknown if it's. I mean, he supposedly was going to have an MRI today, or yesterday, so it hadn't been determined whether or not it's significant.
I mean, the Bears' offense got bailed out completely by Will Levis and the Bears' defense.
Will Levis was horrible.
Yeah. So I mean, the Bears.
Will
defense,
Levis should have made our duds just because he single-handedly lost that game. In fact, it was funny because I think the head coach came out and said we would have been far better off punting on first down every single time, and we would have had a better chance of winning that game.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I mean, for Rome, like I said, for your redraft leagues, we weren't really expecting a whole lot out of Rome this season. Dynasty, that's the main target for him. You're hoping for next year and the year after, and for him to grow with Caleb Williams. So, I mean, right now it's kind of a non thing for fantasy.
Yeah.
I mean, it
Agreed.
might boost Keenan a little bit and DJ Moore, but Caleb Williams did not look very good.
Yeah,
in
Williams
that game,
would still have to be able to throw the ball and complete passes to actually make it worthwhile starting one of those guys.
Yep.
Next up, we move to our studs, starting with Jaden Reed, plus 23.49 points. He was 4 catches on 6 targets, 138 yards and a touchdown, 1 rush, 33 yards and another touchdown. Impressive game by him.
Yeah, like I said, or like we just said, they manufacture touches for him. I mean, he's super fast, shifty, there's really not much to say. I do think, I was talking with my coworker, I do think the condition of the field in that game helped and hurt at the same time.
Yes.
Because you watched a lot of DBs, there's the one, I think A.J. Brown caught one on the sideline and Jair slipped.
Right.
And wasn't able to tackle him, so AJ was able to run a little, for another 15 yards, whereas I think if it was a better field, Jair would have been able to stop and at least hold him up until he got some help to, to full tackle him. So I think Reed definitely was helped out a little bit by that as well,
And I was
still looked.
I was reading people
really
commenting on the field conditions and saying, well, it doesn't impact the soccer players, and it's the same grass that they've got in Green Bay. It's the same. So it's the same materials used to tie down pieces of grass, etc., buried like 7 inches into the ground, etc. Well, there are differences. I mean, the soil composition is probably not 100% the same.
Yep.
The humidity levels are different. The temperatures are different. They're in their winter.
Yeah. Well,
in the southern hemisphere.
And it might be
granted
the
it's
same.
warmer, but and then I heard, but soccer players play on it. Soccer players are pretty much a straight ahead run with an occasional movement. It's not stopping and starting. It's not cutting back. It's not. And most of them are smaller individuals than these guys.
The size and the power that a 300-pound defensive
right.
lineman
It's different running. Even if they're sprinting on the field, it's completely different than what football players do.
Yeah.
So while that argument, holds maybe a little bit of water, I don't agree with it.
Yeah.
So I think that, the conditions for what football players are used to were horrible.
And Jaden Reed, I think he had another touchdown, but it got called back because both Green Bay and Philly had 12 men on the field.
Oh yeah, yep.
So at that point, it's
was
even
that
teams.
to Jaden Reed,
I thought it was to Jaden.
or was that
Reed.
to Watson?
I can't remember.
I
But
remember-
wanted
I
to
remember
say
the
it was
play.
to Reed, but
Yeah.
if it was to Reed, at that point, both teams have the same number of guys out there. Let
Right,
them play.
right. I don't. I watched that play, and I was confused as to if we had switched out personnel, then they're supposed to jump in there and hold the play from starting until both teams have an opportunity.
Yep.
So how did we have a 12th player on the field, and that didn't happen? And how did we have a 12th player on the field?
Yeah. I don't know.
Questionable.
Yep.
Next up, we've got Alan Lazard, plus 16.79. He had 6 catches on 9 targets, dropped the ball early, 89 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 in garbage time. He, it's funny. We talked about it. I dropped him so that I could pick up Juszczyk, so that I could win a game. it's dynasty, so
Right.
it's not as if he holds a ton of value on my dynasty team. I've got CeeDee Lamb, A.J. Brown, and DK Metcalf as my top 3 with others on my bench who are actually better than Alan Lazard. But it looks like we're back to that common thing that Rodgers does, which is he has someone that he feels comfortable with.
Yep.
And he will on that touchdown throw where he caught a guy offside, guy offside.
Yeah.
I mean, he knew exactly where to go, made a perfect throw, and Alan Lazard is going to make that catch 98 times out of 100.
Yeah, I agree. I think this game was just the connection that they have playing together for so many years, and you heard it when Lazard the Green Bay wasn't sure if they were gonna let him walk or trade him or whatever that whole situation. We weren't gonna pay him, and Aaron's like, "No, that's my guy. I need him," kind of thing. So, yeah, in a game where you're fighting to come back, it's just that the familiarity of having him, knowing where he's going to be at the field, and that Lazard knows where Aaron wants to go with the ball and everything.
Exactly.
So,
they've been doing it long enough that it's second nature for them.
Yeah.
Whereas in the first half, he was looking more toward Garrett Wilson. I think he on the drop he got a little frustrated by Lazard, and therefore but he went back to him, and it worked out.
Yeah.
Next up, we've got Saquon Barkley. He was plus 16.19 points. Caught both of his targets for 23 yards and a touchdown. Rushed 24 times for 109 yards and 2 more touchdowns. I'm going to attribute. So let me first say that 24 for 109. That's barely over 4 yards a carry.
Yeah.
Not huge numbers.
No.
A lot of those came on a couple of plays.
Yep.
Early in the game, the Packers defense actually was playing well against the run.
Yep.
And field conditions. I'm not making excuses because, like I said when I did the podcast last week, I will wait to pass judgment on the Packers defense because I'm not sure what we've got. And
brand new coordinator,
new scheme, new. New players at now. It looked great early on when Xavier McKinney picked the ball off.
Well, that was too. Green Bay, just the final result of that game. That's two scoring opportunities they had with the first one was a fumble, correct?
Yep.
And then the pick, you got to score on those.
Yeah.
You got to score touchdowns on those. But yes, it did. It felt later in that game that it was the same Packers defense where it's all right, they're ripping off runs left and right. We can't stop them. All right, here's a big third down. They need 7 yards. We need to stop them.
They get 8.
And they get 8.
Yep.
It felt very familiar.
Yep.
But yes, brand new, whole new scheme, new defensive coordinator.
I like I said,
it's week 1.
Like I said, I want to see what it looks like on a real surface as opposed to that surface. Tell me it was a great surface. I will not agree.
Yeah, I test as it was not.
Right.
And I mean, if Saquon keeps getting this usage, he could be threatening CMC for the number 1 fantasy running back this year. I mean, 24 carries that's granted sure at 4 yards, barely 4 yards or 4 yards a carry.
Yeah, a little over 4.
That's still a lot of opportunities, to rip something big. Or, and you didn't see, they were within range for Jalen Hurts to run, I think the 1 touchdown. Were they down on like the 2 or the 1, I think is one of his rushing touchdowns.
The last one?
Yeah.
Because the first one was like from around 8 or 11 or something.
But, they had the one, I'm pretty sure they had the one in close, and you did not see the tush push.
Right.
So whether that's faith in Saquon or a lack of faith in, the new center, the guy who took over for Jason Kelsey.
Right.
Who knows? But
he looked suspect at times. Next up, we've got Alec Pierce, plus 16.1. 3 catches on 3 targets, 125 yards, and a touchdown.
Anthony Richardson has a cannon.
He does. He does. I mean, Alec Pierce can open up the top, but 3 targets. If he's going to get 3 targets, he's not going to get 3 catches every week, and he's not going to have 125 yards every week.
Yep.
Most of this was not sustainable.
Well, most of it came on that touchdown, and Richardson only completed, 9 passes, I believe? 9 out of like 16 or something? 9
out of 19,
19. So, I mean, not good passing numbers. Obviously, Richardson had a very good game because of the rushing upside. But, I mean, Pierce, very,
and I think
very up and down.
We'll mention him in the waiver wire, but I wouldn't make him a top priority.
No.
Because I don't think that, like I said, none of that is sustainable. Normally you're going to see probably 3 out of 5 or 2 out of 3 for 35, 40 yards. Maybe he'll have a touchdown.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's really worth going after. Next up, we've got Jamison Williams, plus 13.69. He caught 5 of his 9 targets for 121 yards, 1 touchdown. And he had 1 rush for 13 yards.
I mean, this is kind of the Jamison Williams that the Lions, that's what they wanted when they drafted him. I mean, obviously coming out, he was injured. Was it in the championship game he tore his ACL, I believe, and then he had the gambling thing. He got suspended for the first part of of last year. I mean, the guy's super fast, good hands.
Do you see him stealing targets from Amon-Ra?
That was.
Amon-Ra disappeared.
Yes, true. But again, week 1, and that was kind of a weird game because both offenses went, you're going to run the ball 5 times in a row, so will we. It was like Dan Campbell,
But who's their starting running back?
The Lions?
Yeah.
The starter, in my opinion, is Gibbs, but they really have 2 1A running backs.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, he was not.
Montgomery doesn't get targets. Right. And they're back getting targets.
But Montgomery was in to start the game, I believe, and had the majority of the carries.
Yeah, well, Montgomery had quite a few carries.
Right.
And they, like, the running backs, they kind of traded series. And then, obviously, in overtime, they're just like, all right, Monty, go win us a game. But, I mean, Williams, he did that double move on, it was a Tre'Davious White, who should have just, like they were saying, the commentators, like he should have just tackled him. But, beautiful double move. I mean, the guy's, super fast. Goff underthrew one to Jameson just a touch, but the DB, I think it was Goff's pick. The DB, I mean, jumped out the field, out of the stadium, whatever, to make that pick. But that one would have been a big gain too if Goff put just a little bit more on it. But I think again, it was a weird game. a lot of, like I said, a lot of macho, we're going to run the ball a lot. Obviously, with, the Rams, when Puka goes out, your offense turns into Cooper Kupp and Kyron Williams.
Right.
But, yeah, I think Jameson will be, I'm not predicting 100 yards every week, but they're going to take shots with him. And that's what they did last year, too. I mean, even the year prior where he played, like, the last game, and he had one catch for, like, 70 yards, and it was a touchdown. They're going to take shots with him, so it's whether it connects
I mean,
or
a
not.
la Jaden Reed. They want to get him the ball somehow.
I mean,
Whether it's
rush
running
to,
or finding those passes to him. So now we move on to our duds, and we're going to start with Amon-Ra. Minus 11.22. He had 3 catches on 6 targets for 13 yards.
Yeah, again, week 1, weird game script for that one.
Yeah, if I were you, I would go out and get rid of him right away.
I'll take him.
So would I.
Yeah, he'll be fine. I mean,
He will.
that's
No
another guy that
worries there.
Yeah, that's another guy that they manufacture. They write up plays, and
Right.
it's no matter what going to Amon-Ra. So.
Well, and it was kind of like you said yesterday when I picked up Juszczyk. You said they always seem to script a couple of plays to him, and they did. And that's, I mean, there are a lot of players out there that while like a Juszczyk won't get much of anything, but that they have faith in him doing certain things.
Yeah.
And they know Amon-Ra is going to go out there and catch the targets and probably won't complain when he doesn't see the ball.
Yeah, I mean, maybe internally a little frustrated, but I mean, I think he's a team guy too. You saw in the show Receiver on Netflix, I believe it was, that he had he had a torn something off the bone in his leg last season and played through it, and was very, very good. And he had something else that bugged him all season. So he's a team guy. So, I mean, I feel like as long as they win, and if he can contribute here and there, convert a first down or something like that, he's not going to complain. I mean, if he, goes multiple weeks and he only has 3 catches and 6 targets every week, then maybe he might, say something to Goff. But, I think, they get in a tight game and stuff like that where they really need him. That's when you'll really see him shine. So.
Yep. Next up, we've got Caleb Williams, minus 10.59. He was 14 of 29, or less than 50% for 93 yards, 5 rushes for 15 yards. He was bad.
That whole offense did not look good.
Yeah, I don't. It'll come, or that's what the expectation is. The Bears came away with a win, which is what they want, but they also have got to want to see their quarterback improve, and the only way from here is up. I don't think you could get a whole lot worse. I mean, I suppose you could have thrown a couple of picks.
It's true.
But I think they were the first team in I don't know how many years it said that won a game with fewer than 150 offensive yards.
Yeah, I think it was like quarterbacks all time, that rookie, just quarterbacks all time even, or something like that, where it was over 25 pass attempts, under 100 yards, and no touchdowns, and they won the game. And it was Caleb Williams, and that's it. I mean, they let him throw it. He threw it 29 times. It's not, not terrible. So, they were letting him at least
some
try.
Some of those passes were horrible.
Yes.
And all I heard during the preseason was how good he was, how good he looked, and I don't know if that's a here you are in the limelight playing your first professional game. And it kind of scared him a little bit. I would doubt it.
Regular season's different than preseason.
I get it, but I would doubt it.
Yeah.
I mean, you've been there too often in big games that this shouldn't matter at all.
Well, that was a bit of a knock, if I remember, against him coming out of college, was that in big games he does tend to shrink a little bit. So
it's not that big to start with, is he?
Well, he's not, but I mean, game one, against Tennessee, and in Tennessee jumped out to a lead, and then Will Levis imploded, and
Wow.
the Bears defense really obviously helped them out.
Yeah.
So,
Will Levis just made some stupid plays. I mean,
Will
that
Levis can look
that pick six was
amazing.
just stupid.
Will Levis can look amazing one play, and then the next play horrible. So,
Yep. Next up, we've got Kirk Cousins, minus 10.24, 16 of 26 passing for 155 yards, a touchdown, 2 interceptions, 1 rush, 0 yards. That's got to be a little bit more scary than the Caleb Williams.
Yeah, I'll go 50-50 on that Kirk is, one, first game back from the Achilles.
True.
New team, all that stuff.
New offense.
The other 50% is that the Steelers' defense is damn good, and TJ Watt is a monster.
Yeah, he is.
So I'll go 50-50. I mean, obviously, again, week one, a lot of this stuff. I mean, there's a couple situations where you're like, ooh, panic a little bit. If Kirk's your quarterback, if you really punted it.
They're already calling for Michael Penix.
I mean, the draft capital's there. But
the draft capital is there, but the 100 guaranteed
exactly.
is on the other side.
Yeah, and they've got the weapons there too. Whatever you want to say about Kyle Pitts, whether he's actually going to turn out to be a good, NFL tight end. But Bijan, Drake London.
Kyle Pitts actually was one of the better tight ends
he caught
this
a
week.
touchdown. He caught a touchdown, but I don't know why I said that so weird.
Touchdown. He caught a touchdown.
I should have said that for Williams.
Yeah.
But, I think Cousins over the course of the season, he's just, again, week one, back from the Achilles, and you're staring down TJ Watt, coming at you. So
Agreed.
Yeah.
Next up, we've got our third straight quarterback. It's Daniel Jones, minus 9.68. 22 of 42 for 186 and an interception, 6 rushes for 15 yards. Well, first of all, you play in the worst flipping market in sports.
Yep.
You play in the Big Apple, and the fans, in my opinion, I mean, some people would say that they're great fans. They're horrible fans, in the sense that
They're great if you're doing great.
Right. I mean, they're passionate, but they automatically think if you have a bad game, and his offensive line still isn't up to par. He's working with a rookie wide receiver. They don't have a lot of tools.
Yeah.
And Saquon Barkley's out the building.
I don't know. To me, he looked horrible regardless of everything you just said. And, I mean, and we talked about him in the off season that there are games where he looks fine. And, I mean, he's got that sneaky rushing, ability where he can break one off. But I think if I'm the Giants, I mean, you got Malik Neighbors. You got to find somebody else to come in. You gotta.
But do you give it a couple weeks?
Well, yes. I mean, I'm
going to give it the first quarter of the season.
I don't even know who their backup is in New York. Anyways, probably like Mike Glennon or something somehow.
Well, isn't it Tommy DeVito?
No, I thought they cut
Did he
him.
move?
I thought
okay.
they had cut him.
Danny DeVito, sorry.
Yeah.
I
mean, he did not look good at all.
I think it's going to take some time for him and Neighbors to click, and I look at the guy and I see potential. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm the dumb one.
Yeah, maybe needs a change of scenery.
Maybe. Our last stud is a fourth quarterback, and it was Joe Burrow, minus 8.85, 21 of 29, not bad, for 164 yards. That's bad. 4 rushes for 15 yards.
Yeah, I mean, I think they missed Joe Mixon. I mean, Zach Moss scored. He had a rushing touchdown.
Looked pretty good.
Yeah, but
they had no T. Higgins.
Yeah, no T. Higgins.
Jamar Chase has been a hold-in for the past several weeks. So
I mean, he was full go.
He was
had
full
6
go.
targets.
But Was he the same Jamar Chase that
No.
we've seen?
Obviously, he's not playing on his. He didn't get his new contract that he wants, and so again, personally, I couldn't imagine getting the opportunity to be. I understand you're one of the top players in the game. You want to get paid as such, but you're also in the less than a 0.1% of people in the world that get to play professional football
and get paid. Will get paid.
Yes, and I just can't.
And even
imagine,
so, I mean, what's he making?
I don't even remember.
Isn't it like 11 million or something?
Like
I mean, I may be off by a million or two, but it's still a healthy amount of money to play. You signed a contract.
You have 2 years left on it.
You have a contract. Oh, does he really?
Yeah,
I thought he was.
I think he's got 2 years left this year and next year, I believe.
Oh, okay. So maybe it's not quite that much this year. But he was a first round pick, so he's in the fourth year of a 5.
Yeah.
So I mean, I sit here and I say, I get that the NFL kind of controls you, and you don't have a freedom. I mean, first round picks are automatically 4 years with the fifth that could be tied in.
Yep.
And there's nothing you can do about it. That's also the Players Association. Mm-hmm. You're making good money. You're making more than 99% of people in the world. Maybe 99.9% of people in the world.
Yeah.
I get that you're ultra talented. I get, but you've got a contract. Play the contract. It's kind of like Hassan Reddick, and not playing after he was traded and holding out, and he's going to lose so much money, and he's going to lose a year of football. And yeah, maybe he comes back partway through and gets some money, but you've already lost part of a year and a lot of money. Is it worth it?
Yeah, like I said, if I was in that position, I would just want to play.
Yeah.
And let my play, dictate, that contract, that amount that's tied to that contract.
Right.
And if you're Jamar Chase, you know that again, one of the top receivers in the league, you're going to get paid as such. You might not be the new top guy, with all these crazy contracts, but, if you're up there with CD and Justin Jefferson, probably pretty happy with that. But the Joe Burrow one, that's scary for Joe Burrow. I mean, obviously
I think it'll change. I really do. I think it'll turn around, and if you get a Jamar Chase who has been with the team for a few weeks and is back to his old self, and if you can get T. Higgins to stay healthy and on the field.
Yeah. We'll see. Like I said, I think they're going to end up missing Joe Mixon and everything that he could do. They had brought in Zach Moss, and they still use Chase Brown, so they're using 2 people to replace what Mixon, was there for. Yeah. Yeah.
I sometimes don't understand some of that, why you want to get rid of a certain guy and go get a different guy, but they do it. Let's move on to the waiver wire. First, I've got Alan Lazard, and the reason I put him there was you can see that connection between he and Rodgers.
Yep.
I wouldn't say use a whole ton of fab on him.
Yeah.
I think that he is going to have some good games. He's also, if they use him like the Packers did, he's one of the better blocking wide receivers.
Yes, he is very good at that.
He will come back toward the line of scrimmage and block ends and linebackers and everyone else. So that's why I'm saying I wouldn't spend as much as you might think, because he may or may not put up big numbers every week. I wouldn't count on it.
Yeah, I like him as a bench spot, like you said, you get, like I had T. Higgins in my flex, and then day before, or Friday or whatever comes out that he's out, I put Josh Palmer in my flex, and he, got ejected out of that game. But, Lazard could be a nice, could end up, if you hit, like I said, this week you hit, and he scores you 2 touchdowns, you're pretty happy with that, And
Right. Had I had CMC in my flex
yeah,
and could have brought in Lazard instead of him,
Yeah.
that would have been huge.
which I'll throw in, if you're going into Monday night or even Thursday night,
Flex him.
you got those island games, and they're questionable tag, flex, spot, because unless you don't have, if you're stuck, truly stuck.
Well, in a Thursday game, you don't want to flex someone. In a Thursday
True.
game, you want to play them
That
at a
does,
position.
yes.
You want your flex open until Monday.
Yeah.
And, I just, I had heard that he was dealing with some stuff. He hadn't missed, he's missed one game in 2.5 years with San Fran.
Yeah, but you're gonna give me PTSD if you bring up the 2 years prior to that.
Hey, you and I are both in that. I vowed to never draft him again.
Same.
So next up, we've got Alec Pierce. Again, be judicial with Fab. He's not probably the best player out there,
Yeah.
but he's worthy of a waiver wire pickup. And speaking of worthy, next is Xavier Worthy,
If he's
wide
out
receiver
there.
from KC, if he's out
He
there.
probably got drafted.
Well, depending upon the league,
Yeah.
the type of league that you're in and the depth. He's another gadget guy. They will get him touches, regardless. Running the ball, which he had a rushing touchdown and a receiving touchdown. They're going to try and incorporate him because, let's see, he's the fastest guy in the NFL.
Yeah. Yeah.
You want to work him in.
Yep.
Here is where I would put, actually, any of these next three, I would put more Fab toward than the first three. Isaiah Likely, tight end, Baltimore.
Yeah.
And I don't care if you've got Andrews. Isaiah Likely looks more like a wide receiver.
That's
and he's
what I was
probably,
just gonna say that.
outside of Zay Flowers, you really don't have much. Rashad Bateman, while he was a high draft pick 3 years or so ago, 4 years ago, he's just hasn't panned out.
Yep.
So I think that Isaiah Likely will be out there whether Andrews is out there or not.
Well,
Not all the time, but
watching that game, Andrews was on the field a lot. A lot. So was Likely. They were both out there, all together. So yes, I agree. I view, the initial panic of being an Andrews owner in 2 leagues. The initial panic of, oh my God, what is this finally is Likely taking over? What's going on? And then you take a step back and you're like, okay, again, Casey pulled a page out of New England, Bill Belichick, and took your best offensive weapon outside of Lamar off the field.
Yep.
And somebody else has got to step up, and that was Likely. And that touchdown that Likely had, they showed the graphic on the TV. It was a 0.3% chance of that turning into. That was a completely broken play.
Yeah.
And and Likely's super athletic. For as big as he is, super athletic. So, I agree. I like Likely, if you got a Jake Ferguson, David Njoku that might be out for a little while.
And the nice thing about it is, at a tight end position, he's really playing wide receiver. Wide receivers generally score more points than tight ends.
Yep.
So if you can pop a wide receiver type player into that tight end position, it's a plus.
Yeah.
And you're actually playing then 3 or 4 wide receivers as opposed to 2 or 3 wide receivers and a tight end. I just like how he matches up in games.
Yep.
Next up, you've got J.K. Dobbins, running back from the Chargers.
Yeah, he got chased down on a one big run that he ripped, but to me, it looked good. There's reports all in the preseason and camp. He looked explosive. Looked like
If he were to have the type of year that one would expect if he were not injured, if he didn't get injured, if he were to have that type of year, I think he'll be a top 15 running back potentially.
Yeah, and again, week 1, so it's all conjecture.
Right.
They could come out next week and it could be 60% of the runs go back to Gus Edwards.
Right.
So.
But it's like you and I said last year. Gus Edwards looked like a stud because all he had to do was fall for 2 yards and score a touchdown.
Yep.
Led the league in rushing touchdowns.
Sounds right.
I
I would
mean,
not be surprised.
there's a difference between running
Yeah.
capabilities between the two, and I don't think that Gus Edwards is necessarily your main back,
Yeah.
other than to score you touchdowns or in short yardage
Yep.
opportunities. Next up, we've got Alexander Madison, who, while he didn't run it a lot, he was involved in the passing game, and I don't think Zamir White looked that good, did he?
No, he did not. And, yeah, White did not look good. Madison, yeah, again, in the passing game, I don't know. I just find it hard to trust anybody outside of Devontae and even, honest, Brock Bowers, who had himself, pretty good game. First game as a rookie. Obviously, one of the more highly touted, aside from Kyle Pitts, highly touted, rookie tight end prospects.
Coming out. Yep.
So, that one's going to be murky, I think, all season. Because it was all off season. They were all Zamir White's our guy. He's the one, and I think they're still gonna try and give him all of those opportunities to prove that he is. But again, Madison, you get CMC's out, and you don't have Jordan Mason, as your handcuff. Somebody to throw, on your bench that could potentially hit.
Right.
If he's if he's involved in the passing game like he was. I want to throw one more quick name on the waiver wire.
Yep.
I actually like Justice Hill. Obviously everybody was, Derrick Henry, he's going to score 20 rushing touchdowns. Still could. Going to score all these touchdowns and, probably big yardage and stuff. But you saw that against a very good pass rush, Baltimore's offensive line is bad. Granted, not every team has Chris Jones. Destroying the middle of your offensive line.
Right.
And Justice Hill was he was getting targets and, and getting some handoffs. So I like him as a,
Agreed.
If, again, like a Madison, if something happens and your top running back's out for the week or something and you look at the matchup and it's against a good defense, I think Justice Hill will get he'll be more involved that game than he would any other game, because if the Ravens are trying to, if they're playing from behind and trying to win, Derrick Henry's not really the guy anymore, I think, to leave out on the field and just let him, crash into people for the 3 yards a pop. So I like Justice Hill as, like I said, kind of a, bench piece, filler in case you need it.
Yep. Agreed. Well, that's all we've got for this week. If you've got any questions, shoot us an email. Otherwise, I am Ozzy.
And I'm Austin.
Have a great week.
See you later.